This video will show you how to hook up your 003 rack or other Digidesign or Avid interface to your 11 rack via PDIF, which is digital. So here we are at the back of both units, the 003 on top here and the 11 rack on the bottom. Now the first thing you want to make sure is that both units are turned off and that your computer is also off. Make sure that you have your FireWire cable plugged into your 003, put that into the computer. Make sure your 11 rack is hooked up with the USB cable also into your computer. Now here's our PDIF input and output on the 003. Right here they are on the 11 rack. Now you'll need two PDIF cables to do this correctly. Here is an PDIF cable. So let's hook this up. We'll place one end on the out of the 003 and the other end goes to the in of the 11 rack. Here's our other PDIF cable. This will go to the in of the 003. And the other end goes to the out on the 11 rack. So remember, you're going from in to out. And then here's from in on the 11 rack to out on the 003. Once we have this hooked up correctly and we go into Pro Tools and set it up, we'll be hearing the 11 rack here to the main monitor outputs of the 003. Now you say, well, what are these two cables going from the main out of your 11 rack? These are not going to my monitors. These are just hooked up to a small PA unit that I use from time to time when I just want to turn the rack on and play around it a little bit. But we'll be hearing all the rig sounds coming right from the 003 main monitor outputs. So now, turn everything on. After both your interfaces boot up, then you can turn on your computer. So let's launch Pro Tools. I always like to right click and choose Run as Administrator. Now that we're in Pro Tools, we need to set up our two interfaces. So here's how I usually do it. Let me drag that over. I got two screens, so I have to drag that over here. Digidesign 003 FireWire rack. Now, again, how to get to that is hit Setup and Hardware. That brings up this window. So right now our clock source is internal. Here, 11 rack clock source is also internal. That will produce clicks and pops. We don't want clock source to be the same on each interface. We don't want each interface to have its own clock. So 11 rack can be set to PDIF external, then you click OK and you're done. The way I do it a lot of times is put the 003 rack on PDIF and the 11 rack is on internal. I do that. It works. Some interfaces it won't work. Digidesign suggests that you do it that the FireWire rack, or the 003 rack in this case, is set to internal, and that the 11 rack is set to PDIF external. So that's what we're going to do. in this tutorial. I usually just set it to the 003 rack to SPDIF, and this to internal, and then I get my sync light on my 003 rack. But that's not really important. This tutorial, we're going to do it the suggested way, the way that was suggested by one of the creators of the rack. They suggested that the 11 rack is set to SPDIF external, and the 003 rack or 02 rack set to internal. I've asked a couple of different techs at Digidesign, which is now Avid, and they both give me different answers. And really, the answer is it shouldn't matter. Use what works for you. But the way that one of the creators from the rack suggested was that you used setup hardware, that you set your rack to internal, your 11 rack to SPDIF external. These settings here are fine. Okay, let's try it out. Alright, now let's set up our tracks. You can see I already have tracks here created. So what we're going to do is set the in and the out. I go to right here, interface. It's going to be SPDIF, left, right, stereo. Now you notice we don't have the embed setting from the 11 rack. That needs to be changed here. User options. Go right here to rig. Embed settings from SPDIF, left and right. You see now we have the embedded rig symbol. Now this is a stereo track because we're going to be getting a stereo track. Now you may be looking at my screen and say, hey, your meters are a little bit wider than mine. Well, that's because the meters actually have two different states. That's normal or large. I prefer large. To get large, you hold down all three modifiers, which on Windows is Control, Windows key, and Alt, and you just click. Like I said, I prefer the large. So now let's try it out and see what we get. Okay, now first we have to make sure our rig input is on guitar, which it is. Again, in our user options, we'll see our output, digital, is rig outputs. Now you could do a split in, split out, where you have one side being your rig, another side could be your dry signal, and that's one way you could also reamp. The way I'm going to show you to reamp later is using this standard option of rig outputs, which is giving you stereo. Of course, you can do it this way, where it's split in, split out, and you record a mono on one side, mono dry on the other side. You can reamp like that. The way I'm going to show you to reamp is using a 3-cable method, I guess is what they call it, which is 2 SPDIF cables and then 1 audio cable to get your dry signal into Pro Tools. This is the way I prefer to do it. I just like recording with a stereo track. When it comes down to the mixing, I'd probably split it up into 2 monos. We plug the guitar directly into the guitar TrueZ input. Alright, so now we have this set up correctly. We have our SPDIF left, right as our input. Rig input for the 11 rack is the guitar. So let's record enable our track. See if we get sound. And it works. Just note that when you're in using the 11 rack digitally into your 003 rack or other interface, that the volume knob here does not affect the volume that is sent out through the SPDIF inputs and output. This is for the main outs. As you can see, the main volume is on 0. The main volume is on 0, and I'm still getting sound. Alright. Alright, so let's record a little bit. I'm going to put this on solo because I already have other stuff in this session. Let me bring over the edit window just so you can see that we're recording. This is the track right here we're going to be recording on. It's called Audio 8. It's already got something on it, but we're going to record over it. And it's on solo again because I already have other stuff in this session. Well, let's record a little bit. Just to show you that it does work. We can go back. We'll put this on solo again. We'll hit play. There we go. So that's how you set up your 11 rack with your existing Digidesign or Avid hardware hooked up via SPDIF. Alright, let's just recap a little bit about what we already did. We hooked up the 003 and the 11 rack with 2 SPDIF cables. Both of the interfaces are plugged into the computer. 003 is hooked up with FireWire. 11 rack is hooked up to the computer with USB. We came here to our setup, hardware. We set the FireWire 003 rack, clock source to internal, left this alone. 11 rack is set to SPDIF external. We set our in-out on our stereo track to SPDIF, left-right stereo. That way we get a stereo track. You don't have to, like I said before, you don't have to use a stereo track. You can use, you can just choose, say, the left side or the right side if you wish. On a mono track, such as here, you could just choose, say, the left, and you'll get your mono track. But I just like to use the stereo track. We also came over here, we made sure our rig input was guitar. Went to our user options, made sure the digital out was the rig outputs. We armed the track, hit record to record what we wanted, or we just armed the track, we just played around a little bit. So there you go. Enjoy.